Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 8 of Social Work 668. Today, we are going to focus on client satisfaction surveys and sampling. So I will go ahead and share my screen with you, and we will get started. Okay, so again, client satisfaction surveys and sampling. And the reason why we are getting into these topics is because your logic model is coming up, it's close to being due. So we're going to really switch gears for the last part of this course and focus on the needs assessment process. So I want you to really focus and think about the outcomes linked to your logic model. So what you are going to increase and what you are going to decrease in terms of your goals for your population of focus. So in order to do that, we're going to have to think about ways we're going to measure those outcomes using surveys, and that could be related to client satisfaction or other measures such as, let's say, substance use or depression. But we're also going to have to think about strategies and techniques to sample our population of focus. So we're going to focus on those two things today. So quick recap of last week. We did formative and process evaluations and understanding how they fit into our overall evaluation plan. We had our discussion board, which you put on a rough draft of your logic model so you can get feedback from your classmates. And we also did a survey. And I want to show you some of our initial survey results. So I didn't get too many results related to this survey at this point in the class. It is only Sunday, but I had to prep a little early this week because I'm still in deep grading mode. So this is just a kind of a snapshot of those of you who have submitted so far. So for those of you who gave feedback on what's helped your learning, and just to quickly reiterate, this is kind of a midterm evaluation so that I know I'm on the right track. You really liked the video lectures. You liked learning the ins and outs of how a program runs. You also like doing our assignments in pieces, which I really appreciate because I just want to reiterate the fact that there's no such thing as self-plagiarism in this class. One assignment kind of builds on the next. So currently you're building your logic model assignment. So all the work that you've done for this class in our mini weekly assignments, I'd like you to use that for your logic model. You also really like the option to select a review. So that's one of those things where you can kind of stay on track and check off the things as you're moving through. And you also like the weekly videos and explanations of the assignments. So what has hindered your learning? Some of you are sort of confused still about the concept of program evaluation, and it's not something that's quite interesting in terms of your career. And I just want to tell you that that is completely normal at this stage in the class. Students always are less excited about research methods and program evaluation and more excited, let's say, about their practice and policy classes, because you're really ready to get out into the field and practice social work. But my hope is that, as you move through your social work career, you might actually land in a leadership position, or being a manager, or somebody who might be in a position to evaluate the program, so that we have at least planted seeds in terms of what program evaluation is and in terms of its importance. So other than that, many of you said not much has really hindered you. Suggestions for improvements. Not many people had any suggestions. People gave a lot of positive feedback, which I really appreciate. People said that they wanted to keep the MARC review, which has helped, and overall said the course is pretty well organized. So it looks like we are on the right track. What did you do to help yourself learn in this course? So I always think this is really nice for students who are really excelling in this course to maybe help students that are struggling a little bit by, outlining some strategies and techniques. So people who are, believing that they are successful in this course, which I'm sure you are, so that they watched the video. The videos helped a lot to help themselves learn. They made sure to pay attention to the material and incorporate the written feedback that I've given them each week. Also read the material, make sure you do your reading every week, And that is really linked onto the soft chalk material, and also reaching out to the professor when she has questions. So please continue that. No question is too big or too small. So what did you do, or what prevents you from learning in this course? So this is just to kind of get a sense of what some of the hangups might be. Students said they haven't been prioritizing school as much as they should because the internship takes up a lot of time. Keeping up to date on weekly assignments and due dates, and giving themselves more time to work on weekly assignments. So I can tell that some of you are feeling quite stressed at this point in the course. So I just want to announce that I'd like to give everybody full soft chalk points for this week, because I want to kind of reward you for all the work that you've done so far and also take one less thing off your plate. I don't want that to replace you doing soft chalk, because our soft chalk is going to be important this week. It's going to be on sampling and client satisfaction. So it is important information that you're going to need to know for your program evaluation assignment. But I just want to make sure that, you all can have something maybe that alleviates a little bit of pressure this week. Okay. What could you do to improve your learning in this course? Students said get ahead of the material. Some students said they're doing really good, continuing to read, and giving oneself more time. Other comments were, it's been a very well organized class, and I appreciate that. And the class is great. So thank you very much. That means a lot, because I've worked really hard to kind of put this class together, and I'm happy to adjust it over time as well. So I wanted to answer a really quick question about a Gantt chart. So some of you have asked, what's a Gantt chart compared to a logic model, and what might that look like? So a Gantt chart is really a chart that is a calendar that has a list of tasks. On the left-hand side and over the top has months attached to it. And this can be a really great organizational tool to keep your team or your evaluation team, your research team on task. So for example, what months are we going to recruit? What months are we going to do data collection? What months are we going to do data analysis? So here's just a quick example of what a Gantt chart looks like. Mid-semester grades, I'm going to be reaching out to everyone this week once I finish grading all of your needs assessment, just to give you a personal email letting you know where you are in the class. Some of you are not completing the soft chalk lessons or weekly assignments, and I really want to strongly suggest you complete each week. We can't go back, we can only move forward, and there's still plenty of opportunities for points. So please stay on track. Contact me if you have any concerns. So this week, client satisfaction surveys. Our journal is that I'm going to ask you to think more about your own sampling design, which is super exciting because this means we're getting into the final leg of our course, which is thinking about our needs assessment. We also have an optional synchronous session Tuesday, October 11th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via Zoom. So I have linked that in this week and last week's weekly session so that you have access to it. Okay, so we are going to explain non-probability sampling and probability sampling so that you can get a better idea of which one is more suited for your needs assessment design. So just to give you a quick overview, I want to say that if you're working with a small organization or a small nonprofit that is sort of self-contained, that is really your sampling frame. It might be only 20 employees. So if that is the case, and that is the case for many of my students in this course, I would choose a non-probability sampling design, which means it's called the convenience, availability, or purposive sampling, which means you're going to reach out to every member of the organization that fits your inclusion criteria and get a survey from them, get a qualitative interview them, get their opinion for your program evaluation. If your sampling frame is a little bit larger, if your sampling frame is a little bit larger, let's say the entire state of Kentucky, and you are looking at every child welfare worker in the state of Kentucky, You might use probability sampling, which means that you are going to include randomization. So I'm going to get to those two things in a minute, but I just want to let you know, just to reiterate, small organization, which many of my students do because they use their practicum, their internship, or their job for their needs assessment, non-probability is probably where it's at for you. If you have a much more large scale design, let's say you're doing child welfare workers in the entire state of California or Washington or Kentucky, you're going to want to engage in probability sampling. Okay, so let's go back to non-probability sampling. That's for those of you who are working within an organization. It may provide insight, but cannot state that the sample was scientifically determined because you are not using randomization. It's possible that another sample would produce different results or findings might be right on. It's easy to construct. That's a benefit, a strength of it. It's less involved and it's less expensive. Another strength of this design. You don't need to create a sampling frame, which is a real or virtual list of every individual in the population, because you're just going in to that organization and trying to find everybody that fits your inclusion criteria within an organization. That could be, let's say you are interviewing everybody who is a direct service provider. That could be your inclusion criteria. It provides you a quick estimate of the group, but the findings may be accurate, but it also might be considered a fluke and not represent reality. What I'd like to just say about that is that often your findings, if you use non-probability sampling, aren't able to be extrapolated, let's say, onto a national sampling frame. So you can't say, okay, I've looked at the Boys and Girls Club in Louisville, Kentucky, and now I understand the way Boys and Girls Clubs operate across the country. However, they might be transferable to other local settings. So it doesn't mean that your findings are not valid. Okay, more on non-probability sampling design. So non-probability sampling is a sampling technique where the odds of any member selected for a sample cannot be calculated. So it's the opposite of probability sampling, where you actually can calculate the odds, which we'll get to in a minute. In addition, probability sampling involves a random selection, while non-probability does not. It relies on the subjective judgment of the researcher. So it's up to us to say, yeah, I think you meet inclusion criteria for this because of your lived experience or because you've been at the organization this long. You have a lot to share. You have a lot that we can learn from. So the odds do not have to be equal for a method to be considered probability sampling. For example, one person could have a 10% chance of being selected and another person could have a 50% chance of being selected. It's non-probability sampling when you cannot calculate the odds at all. And I would say that's okay, because looking at the odds of being selected is not really the purpose or the point of non-probability sampling. It's just important to kind of keep that in the back of our minds. So for this week's journal assignment, I'm going to ask you kind of the strengths and limitation of your chosen sampling approach. So let's go through some advantages and disadvantages. So a major advantage of non-probability sampling is that compared to probability sampling, it's very cost and time effective. So less time and cheaper. It's also easy to use and can be used when it's impossible to construct probability sampling. So when you essentially have a small population to work with. One major disadvantage of non-probability sampling is that it's impossible to know how well you are representing the population. So you are not able to recruit a representative sample because of the lack of randomization. Plus, you can't calculate confidence intervals or margins of error. This is the major reason why, if at all possible, you should consider probability sampling methods first. But again, it's not always possible. So here are two other resources if you want to learn more about non-probability sampling. Okay, let's turn the page to probability sampling, which uses randomization, random sampling techniques. So compared to non-probability, which uses non-random processes. So probability sampling is based on the fact that every member of the population has a known or equal chance of being selected. So this would look like putting the names of every child welfare worker in the state of Washington into a hat and then randomly selecting 50. I'm just saying that for argument's sake. And then you go ahead and recruit those individuals. So another example, if you had a population of 100 people, each person would have the odds 1 out of 100 of being chosen. With non-probability sampling, which we covered in the previous slide, those odds are not equal. For example, a person might have a better chance at being chosen if they live close to the researcher or have access to the computer. So our selection criteria relies on more subjective things. So probability sampling gives you the best chance to create a sample that's truly representative. So you can only say that you are recruiting a representative sample if you are engaging in probability sampling. So that is a strength. Using probability sampling for finding sample sizes means that you can employ statistical techniques like confidence intervals and margins of errors when explaining your sampling strategy. Okay, some limitations are that it's very expensive. It's not always possible. If you are working with a smaller organization, it's also very time consuming. So next week, we're going to focus on single system and group research designs to figure out which design you are interested in engaging with for your needs assessment. Just remember that our logic model is right around the corner, due October 24th. Just some final tips for being successful with the logic model. Remember to review all resources on session 6. Also review the materials and video I've posted under your assignment tabs. Read the full assignment description. I really grade this based on a rubric that is linked to that assignment description. And last but not least, please contact me if you have any questions and try to attend the review session as well. All right, I just want to give you a round of applause. You have done so well so far. I love the logic models that you posted this week on the discussion board. Please give each other feedback. I really appreciated those who followed a more traditional approach, maybe using some of those templates from the University of Wisconsin, but I also appreciate those of you who have been more creative in your approach. So I am very open to innovation. Just make sure you're focusing on improving your overall outcomes. So what are you looking to decrease? What are you looking to increase? For example, focusing on increasing well-being amongst your population, decreasing burnout. All right, and lastly, practice self-care. And I am a huge believer that as instructors, we should not be promoting self-care if we are not taking something off your plate so that you are not so overwhelmed throughout the semester. So again, just wanted to reiterate that I am giving free points for our soft chalk this week for week 8 to hopefully alleviate some of the pressure. All right, fantastic. I hope you all have a wonderful week 8, and I hope to see you at the review session, and good luck with your logic models. Thanks, everyone.